And welcome everyone to this 55th Academies for Surveys in Waves, or as we call them, trackers. So, to next page. So, the agenda of today. We'll have a very short introduction explaining what we understand surveys in waves or trackers to be, and what we try to solve in this first iteration of the feature. Then we'll do a demo where I show you everything that we have done, a recap to underline the things that we've seen in the demo, and as always we end with questions. I expect that this will take about half an hour. That's it. Let's start. The introduction. What are surveys in waves or trackers? Well, surveys in waves are long-running projects that until the release of this new feature required that you created several surveys to meet the demands of that project. Now, the problems with this approach is that each time that you do that, you need to create that new wave from scratch again, while most of these waves actually have pretty much repeating things. So that's a waste of time. The survey project ID and the URL changes each time that you start a new survey, so they change with each wave, which if you try to automate things, or if you connect with a panel, can be problematic because each time you have to reconfigure things. And there is a lot of timely manual management needed. For instance, most of these waves need to be started at a very particular moment. They need to be stopped at a particular moment. And if you do that with surveys, that requires that you need to log in at the exact correct time to make sure that you start and stop those surveys again. Which might not be a very big thing if you run one tracker, but if you run several of them, that's a big thing, and it's error prone. So these basically are the three things that we try to address in this first iteration of the tracker feature. Let me remind you how we develop software. We try to add value quickly, and when we done, and when we think, okay, this has enough value, we release it. That does not mean that we then consider that feature to be done. At that moment, we invite you to give feedback and actually say from all of these features, okay, this is what is missing from this. That would be very useful if you add this, or this particular thing, how this feature is working, is not working for me. Could you slightly change that? Then we will iterate on that feature until it meets all the demands. So if you have any feedback on this, don't hesitate to drop a message to either the help desk or directly to me, and then we'll get into a conversation how we could improve. So with that being said, let's start the demo and let's actually take a look on what we have released for this first iteration. We'll go to the manager. Let's go to the start page, which is the page with all the surveys, and we have added one new menu option, which is called trackers, which you see here on the top side. This should be available in all of your domains, because this is already released. So if you open your manager, you should see trackers here as well. We open that, we'll get a list of the trackers that are already created. Let's simply create a new one to see what they are about. So let's create a new tracker. This is the Wednesday Academy. There are survey groups here, so you can assign the tracker to a survey group as well. That behaves exactly the same way as a survey that you assign to a survey group. It means that the tracker can only be seen by people that are a member of that survey group. I accept the default, which is that everybody will see the tracker. And then we get to the screen that you would pretty much recognize from your normal questionnaire creation screen with some options removed. And this is where we add the highest level of the tracker. So what we can do here, we can add media files and we can add translations. And those will then be available for all the waves, for all the next waves that you create within this tracker. We have fieldwork settings. That is only the response codes. And again, these response codes will then be available for all of your waves. And we have a setting called time separated waves or overlapping waves. We'll talk about it at the end of the demo, what this precisely does, because it will make more sense once we have seen how the waves behave. Default, it's overlapping waves, so that is what we are going to work with first. Then we have general settings, which basically are the most important thing here is you can actually see the survey group and who created this survey and is the current owner of this survey. And then we have sample and invitations and monitor field work. Both of them we will take a look at later when we created a few waves and there's actually some data in here. So this is how the top level of that tracker feature looks like. So let's try and create some waves. So we'll go to waves and we just created this tracker, so there are no waves now. So let's add a wave. And we need to give it a name. Call it Wednesday Academy Wave 1. I could create it from a wave. I currently cannot do this because I don't have any waves yet in this tracker yet. So the only option to me available now is blank wave. So we'll choose the blank wave. And again, we get in a screen that pretty much looks like the normal screen that you get when you are creating a new survey. So here I can upload the script. Quickly do that. Click on upload script and I will choose wave 1Q. This is a very simple script. It has 4 very simple questions and 1 quota question. Let's save this script. And I said it has 1 quota question, so let's create a quota as well. Quota you create on wave level. So any quota belongs for the specific wave. So let's create this quota. Very simple quota to gender, male, female. Save this one. Go to order and nest. There is nothing to order and nest because it's just 1 variable. And let's do the targets. Now let's not bother too much with the targets too, because we're interested in the tracker feature, not in the quota feature. So very simple quota frame. So we uploaded a questionnaire. One thing to notice in the questionnaire, normally if you upload a questionnaire, then the upload function for the media files will appear. As you've seen, that hasn't happened because you upload the media files on tracker level on the highest level, not per wave. You upload them on the tracker level and then they are available for all waves. Fieldwork settings is also a bit different because this is a tracker. All the fieldwork settings are on the tracker level, and the only fieldwork setting on the wave level is a new setting, and this is where you actually can configure the start and the end time of this wave. For now, I will not configure anything. We will take a look at this later once we have a few waves in there and see how this behaves. So we got a questionnaire. We now need to publish this to make sure it is available. Yeah, publish. And let's immediately do an interview. So let's start this as well. Start field work. Yeah. And then first, before we actually do the interview, let's copy the live link and let's take a look at that link. So I will copy and paste this into Word. Until this point, until the question mark, this is the link as you would always get for a survey. So this is what we call the base URL. And as you will see later onwards, this base URL will not change. That will be the same for all of the waves that you create in this tracker. And then we have one Nfield wave ID, and this then actually identifies which wave should be used for this interview. So that is the URL. Now let's actually do the interview. Let me close a few tabs here. Let's simply start this interview. And as you will see, it's question 1 from wave 1. This is the quota question. So let's say male, and then we have 3 more very simple questions, just to show you how this functions. Now, so that was our first wave. We done our first interview in this wave, which you will notice if we go to monitor field work. Let's hide this one. You can see we have done 1 successful interview. Here we can also see the quota. 1 male. So that is 1 wave. Let's make this more interesting. Let's create our second wave. So we'll add a wave again. Again, call this the Wednesday Academy wave 2. This time, because we already have a wave, we can actually choose to create this from another wave. If I had several waves, there was a list of waves here, there's only 1 other wave, so I can say, okay, let's create this from this wave. I click create, and it will then create the second wave. As you can see, it has the same questionnaire, it has the same quota, with the same targets, not the achievements, of course. This is a blank quota frame, but it is exactly copied from the first wave. One thing I want to change, I do not want to use the same script, so I will upload a new script, which, by the way, is not really a new script. It's the same script as we used for wave 1, but one difference you saw in that interview that we were mentioning wave 1 for each question. And the only difference in this script is that this script at that place says wave 2, so we can actually see from the questionnaire which wave this is. So we have created our second wave. We have uploaded the new script. Let's publish this again. Started. Started, and let's copy the live link. Yeah, let's first go to Word and paste this live link here. So this is the link for the second wave, and as you can see, the base URL is exactly the same. The only difference between those 2 URLs is that wave ID. This is a different wave ID. This is the wave ID for wave 2. I'm sure that really is so. Let's do an interview. And now it should actually say question 1 from wave 2. So we are indeed in wave 2. Last question from wave 2. Okay, so we have done 2 interviews now, 1 for each wave. If I monitor per wave level, I will see there's one interview. I can go to quota and I see the quota achieved for this one interview. If I go back to tracker level, so remember we had a monitor there too. Then it will, if I go to progress, it will actually say 2 interviews because I done 2 interviews on tracker level. There is no quota here because the quota belongs specifically to a wave. So here I could follow the progress of the entire tracker. I can also drill down here and say, okay, I only want to see the progress for tracker 1. And as we say, 1. So this is the difference between monitoring on tracker level and monitoring on wave level. On tracker level, you get the completes for all the waves. You cannot look in the quota at the quota detail level because quota specifically belongs to a wave. Okay, let's do one more thing. Let's go back to trackers. And let's get into that wave again. So setup, go to waves. We still have, I think, on the copy and paste. Yeah. We have that URL and that wave ID belonging to wave 2. Now, what happens if I remove this wave ID? So this is only the base URL, not the wave ID. Now, what happens if I start an interview without a wave ID? As you see, it actually starts an interview. It starts the interview from wave 2. That is not a random choice. It will start an interview for the most recently started wave. So in this case, that would be wave 2. So if you use the base URL without specifying a wave ID, it will start an interview for the most recently started wave. You might think, okay, that's not what I want because I don't want my respondents to start playing with this and then remove the wave ID and then actually still starting an interview. So I want them in a very specific wave. Remember, if you look at this URL, that Nfield wave ID, that is a variable. So you can define a sample variable in your script and then simply check if that wave ID actually has a value. And if it doesn't have a value, you can then at that moment decide in your script, okay, I do not want this. I end this interview. That's a workaround for now. If you feel that that should be more should be solved at a higher level, please let us know and we will think about it. So let's continue. So we'll start. We have started a wave. We have started an interview without specifying the wave. Let's end this interview. And let's very quickly create a third wave as well. And we'll call that Wednesday Academy Wave 3. Do that from wave 2. As you can see, I can now choose from wave 1 and 2. Again, let's swap out the script file from wave 1, 2 to wave 3. Again, the only difference is that this will actually mention that it is wave 3. And Publish it. Oops. Start field work. And let's very quickly again do the same thing. Let's start a survey without a wave ID. And it now should start survey wave 3 because that is the most recently started. And it does. So let's finish this one too. So next step. So we now know how to start those waves. We now know what happens if we specify a wave ID. One more thing to take a look at, and that is what if we specify respondent keys. So let's do that. Let's get to the wave. Let's go to wave 2. Let's just make sure that we have the correct URL. So we copy the live link and what I will do, because I've done this no, that's going to be this. So let's simply copy and paste that here. So this is our wave ID for 2, and let's add a respondent key. Simply do that by saying ampersand respondent key is F1. Respondent key is F1. Yeah. So let's start this interview. Yeah, it picked up the respondent key because we have a pause knob, because we have a pause button now. So let's say female. And because this is a respondent key, we can actually pause it. And if we then resume it, that is respondent key F1, it will resume from question 2 for wave 2. Now, let's pause it again. And there is one thing that you should realize when using respondent keys. Respondent keys, as soon as they are tied to a wave, they belong to that wave. Respondent keys should be unique for the entire tracker, not per wave. Now, what does that mean? Now, if we go back to waves and we'll go to wave 3 and we'll get our live link for wave 3. We'll copy and paste this here and we'll say respondent key is F1, so that is the same respondent key as we used for wave 2. And I enter this one. As you see, it will actually start the interview for wave 2 because this respondent key is tied to wave 2. So whatever you specify on that URL, which wave it is, the respondent key will overrule that if that respondent key is already tied to a specific wave. That also means if I end this to the last question, and I again try to start it with respondent key F1. This is the wave ID for wave 3, but it actually says no, this interview was already completed. Not for wave 3, it was completed for wave 2. But as said, that respondent key is specifically tied to a wave. Now, how does this happen? How can I actually upload respondent key? That is the other thing we're going to take a look at. That we need to go back to the tracker level. So Wednesday Academy tracker setup. And as you can see here, we actually have simple and invitations. And here we can upload respondent data. I already done that for a tracker. So let me go to that tracker, which is the shared respondent ID setup. And I already uploaded sample for this particular tracker. There it is. As you can see, it is sample simply called a GR key and then a follow number. So let's see what happens. This is on tracker level. As you can see, this travel is not used. So let's use this GR key 3. Let me actually write that down. So let's go to shared respondent. Go to waves. Let's actually say let's go to wave 1. Setup, and simply say here, copy the live link, and let's start an interview for respondent key. Yeah, already says 2 because I done this yesterday as well, but this should be 3 because that is the one that was still available in the pool. And then it starts an interview. This one is a question that is only presented to males because in the sample table I already created a variable gender and filtered what males or females. So this is just to show that it is actually picking up the sample data as well from the general pool. We have a question about age and one question that will then only be shown to people from a certain age. And then the last question. So if we now go to this wave and we go to the sample and invitation of this wave, you will see that the GR card 3 is now part of this wave. As you can see, there is no upload button here. To upload invitations, you upload your respondents on tracker level. And what happens as soon as you then use that for a particular wave, that respondent is then moved to this wave, including the result of the interview. So if I go back to the general setup, so let's go back to trackers and let's start the shared respondent and the setup. And we'll go to sample and invitations. You will see that that GRK3 is no longer part of this pool because it is now actually tied to wave 1. So this is how you get respondent in. You upload respondents on the general level, and then they are tied to waves as soon as you start using those respondents in a particular wave. Now, then we have one more thing. Well, actually 2 more things to take a look at. The other one, the first one, let's create a new tracker. Let's call it Wednesday time. It's created. And remember from the first time, about half an hour ago, I showed you the field work and that we have a setting here, time separated waves and overlapping waves. Until now, all the waves we done you saw were overlapping waves. I could start as many waves as I wanted. That's not always what you want. Very often when you do trackers, there is one wave that is active and all other waves are inactive. Well, if that is your use case, what you should configure here is time separated waves. Save it and let's see what that then actually does. So if we go to waves, add a new wave, simply call this wave 1, create it, upload the script, wave 1, open, Save it. And then I won't bother with the quota. We'll just publish it. And we'll start it. Start fieldwork. Okay, then we'll go back to waves. And as you can see, we have one wave that is start. So we'll add a second wave. We'll call it wave 2. Oops. Oh, I actually closed this one. This is not what I intended to do. So let's reopen the manager. Go to trackers. Wednesday time trackers, that's the one where we were working at. We still have one wave, which is started. Add a second wave 2. We'll create this from wave 1. We'll simply accept everything. So we'll immediately publish this and we'll start it. And remember, this is the one where we said we do not want overlapping waves. So I will start the field work. It will start the field work as always, but if we go back to waves now, you will actually see that has stopped wave 1. So this is how that time separated waves works. As soon as you start a new wave, it will actually stop the earlier wave. And then we have one last thing to take a look at, which also has to do with timely measurements. So let's go again to the Wednesday Academy's setup. Waves. And as you can see, all the waves are started for this particular one because we allow overlapping waves. So let's go to wave 1. And let's go to setup here. And let's go to field work for this wave 1. And as you can see, we can actually configure a start and an end date here. Just to show you how this works, let's configure an end date. So the 9th, this is local time. So I'm going to set the end date for the 9th at 8 o'clock. As you can see, wave 1 is started. So it shows here in the background. I will set the end date at 8 o'clock. So that is actually in the past. Save it. And it immediately stopped the survey because the end date of this survey has been reached. So that is how that start and end date works. If you configure a start date, it will the survey will start at the moment that start date has been reached. It will be stopped the moment the end date has been reached. This does not make the actual start and stop fieldwork button here unavailable. You can still use that one, and that will then overrule whatever settings you have set here. But keep in mind the last one wins. So if I would start this fieldwork and I would then save this again, it will be stopped again. So be a bit careful there. These are all the features that I wanted to show. So let's go back to the presentation. And let's continue from the current slide. So let's do a short recap on what we have seen and what we should remember from this. Now, as we've seen, the media files and translations are configured at the highest level, at the tracker level, and they are shared between all waves. You cannot upload specific media files or translations for a specific wave. This is what it means to run a tracker. You share all of these things between all the waves. All waves use the same base URL. If you want to start a specific wave ID, a specific wave, you have to add that wave ID to that base URL. So that's the third item we have here. Not specifying that wave ID in the URL will start the most recently started wave. Respondent keys must be unique per project, so not per wave. They must be unique per project, and once in use, they are tied to a specific wave. If you then use that respondent key, it will always use that wave, no matter what you have configured on the URL. Wave can be configured to be overlapping in time. That's the default, or not. If you configure them to be not overlapping, they will stop the earlier wave if you start the new one. And then the last thing, the calendar thing that we see. Waves can be configured to start and or stop at specific dates and time. And that gets to the end of this. Any questions, Art?
Yes, Frank, a question came in, and if anybody else has a question, please use the chat, of course. Is server wave creation fully supported by the API?
Yeah. This also means if you want to download data, you have to specify the wave ID. If you want to download data for a tracker, you have to specify the wave ID for which wave you are downloading data. And yeah, this is all already fully supported by the API.
Okay, thank you. Those were the questions.
Okay. Then the final remarks, as always, recording of the sessions will be available later this week. Manuals are already updated. If you have a suggestion for a topic, please write to your help desk and we will take that into consideration. We have already 2 academies planned. One is for testing surveys. That is a feature that we have extended over the last few weeks. So we would like to take you through all the things that we have done there. That will not be a very big academy. It will take about as much time as this one. We will run that in 2 weeks. And we are currently busy extending the KP interview location feature. We are basically going to allow you to get a location during the interview and use that in your script. We are building that as we speak, so that will either be available at the end of the current sprint, so in 2 weeks, or at the end of the sprint after that in 4 weeks. We will run that academy as soon as that feature is released. So this is what we have planned. Any new questions?
No further questions, Frank.
Okay, then thank you for your attention, and talk to you in 2 weeks about testing interviews. Bye-bye.
Thank you all for joining. Bye-bye.